Good morning, I'm harleysch from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for January 25th, 2024. There was an announcement yesterday by the International Court of Justice that tomorrow, Friday, at 1 p.m. Central European Time, they will announce their decision on the motion brought by South Africa that measures be taken against Israel under the terms of the Genocide Convention of 1948. As my colleague Jason Ross points out, although Israel is the defendant in the case, the court itself is on trial. And the case was presented by South Africa, by a team of lawyers and others. It was very strong, eloquently argued, and these are the main points they made. They showed evidence of indiscriminate attacks on civilian population, a collective punishment, with many casualties, especially of women and children, this in violation of international law. They also pointed out the denial of food, water, and fuel, and the destruction of hospitals and medical care, and the bombing of so-called safe zones violates international law. As to the statement of intent, they had videos of statements from leaders, including the President of Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu, just expressing intent to carry out collective punishment, including describing the Palestinians as animals, that there are no innocents, statements from other leaders, and soldiers celebrating the statement of Netanyahu that they are out to destroy the Amalek, the biblical opponents of Israel, who supposedly God commanded the Jews to kill. Now, this is pretty hard, damning evidence. But Israel was given an opportunity, as legal cases do, to rebut the charges against them. And they had a team of lawyers who had a second day of the trial to do that. They argued that they have a right to self-defense, to protect Israeli citizens from the kind of attacks carried out by Hamas on October 7th, and also threats from Hamas that they will continue to carry out such attacks. They blame the civilian casualties, not on collective punishment, but on Hamas, by saying that Hamas had used the population as human shields to protect themselves from the Israeli attack. Now, due to the censorship in the West, the mainstream media of the West did not show much at all of the South African case, despite the fact that most of the rest of the world was able to see it. On the contrary, though, the Israeli defense was given ample coverage in mainstream media in the West. And so the idea of censorship is part of the whole policy of protecting and defending Israel. Now, it's likely that many of you did get to see video coverage, and as well as many of the videos which show the horrific treatment of Palestinians, children that have suffered from the fighting, have died, grieving parents, destroyed infrastructure, and so on. And it's disturbing. In my view, and in the view of much of the world outside of the TransAtlantic that have seen these videos and have not had the effect of censorship from the West and have been able to reach some conclusions, the case is a slam dunk. The court should issue a demand for the end of fighting. The global majority, as expressed just 2 days ago by the non-aligned movement, the global majority is calling for a ceasefire. And there are demonstrations in the streets, not only in the Arab world, but in the Western world, demanding a ceasefire and an end to the killing. Now, it's clear there's enormous pressure on these judges who will be issuing the ruling tomorrow. While Biden and his team have been crying crocodile tears about civilian casualties, the women and children who have been killed have demanded that the Israelis be more precise in their targeting. Nevertheless, they're continuing to provide weapons and political support, a cover for the Israeli actions. Now, if the court rules in favor of the South African action, the South African motion, what will the US, the UK, and the European Union nations do? How will they respond? Will they accept the judgment? And if so, will they use their power to force the Israelis to stop the fighting, to stop the assault? In other words, will they force Israel to accept the ruling of the World Court of Justice? If not, it will provide just one more example of the hypocrisy and lies which underlie the Western game of purporting to defend democracy and the rule of law, when in fact turning a blind eye to injustices, including genocide, committed on their watch. And it will make a mockery of the claims of people like Secretary of State Blinken and the European Union's Ursula von der Leyen that they are defenders of a rules-based order. In fact, they are accepting the violation of international law unless they ensure that the verdict is carried out. Now, there's more than just the credibility of the International Court of Justice that's at stake. The population of the former colonial world will be watching, not just what the judges say, but what will be the reaction in the West if, in fact, the judges rule that Israel is guilty of genocide and must cease their attacks. Will there be a response demanding that the governments of the West accept the ruling? Will there be a commitment to defend the rule of law in the population? Will there be a demand that justice be done? Or if the judges knuckle under to the pressure from the US, the UK, and NATO establishment, will citizens of the West act to demand a just resolution of the conflict, both for Israelis and Palestinians? And what, in fact, would be a just resolution? A ceasefire, immediate and durable. The return of the hostages. A plan for security guarantees for Israel and Palestine. A plan to reconstruct Gaza. And a plan to allow an independent statehood for the Palestinians, which would require economic provisions similar to those that were part of the annexes of the original Oslo Accord. So there's a lot at stake in this. The credibility of the West is at stake. The rest of the world is moving into a new development architecture with the Belt and Road Initiative, with the BRICS, with the move outside the weaponization of the dollar, with the idea that nations should put their resources behind the development of the physical economy for the benefit of their people and for the benefit of other nations in which they are engaged in mutual cooperation. That's the motion of most of the rest of the world. While the Western world, the TransAtlantic or the Anglosphere, continues to push for a war to degrade Russia, threatens China, threatens Iran, and supports the weaponization, the weapons deliveries to Ukraine and Israel as they carry out these acts against other nations. So the question then is not just the credibility of the court, it's the credibility of all of us. Now, I don't know if I'll have the ruling in time for the update tomorrow, we'll see. But you should be looking for it. And also send me your questions. Tomorrow's Friday, so I'll take your questions and comments. Send them to me at harleysch@gmail.com. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.